She thought she was beginning her forever. He told her Hawaii was heaven on earth. But 2 days after the wedding, paradise echoed with screams. When resort staff opened the door to Villa 12, they found the bride unconscious, bruised, and barely breathing. The groom? Missing along the rocky shoreline. And the story the world thought it knew was only half true. This is a case where love became a cage, where a dream vacation turned into a nightmare, and where the truth hiding behind smiles and wedding vows would shock an entire nation. What you're about to hear isn't just another crime story. It's a warning. It's a mirror. And it might just save a life. Welcome to Silent Witness True Crime Stories. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe, and also download your free ebook by clicking the link in the pinned comment. What really happened inside that villa? Why did a dream honeymoon end in violence? Was this a crime of passion or a plan years in the making? These are the questions that haunted investigators, that left a family shattered, and that forced an entire community to ask how well we really know the people we love. Because sometimes, the person who promises to protect you is the same person you need protection from. And sometimes, paradise is just a pretty word for a place where no one can hear you scream. Her name was Claire, 33 years old, a pediatric nurse from Eugene, Oregon. She had soft brown eyes, a laugh that filled a room, and a heart that believed in second chances. Her coworkers called her the glue of the unit. Parents trusted her with their sick children. She worked double shifts during flu season and never complained. On her days off, she volunteered at an animal shelter and baked cookies for her neighbors. Claire was the kind of person who made the world feel a little less heavy just by being in it. She wasn't naive. She'd been hurt before. A bad breakup in her 20s left her guarded for years. But by her early 30s, she was ready to try again. She wanted what everyone wants. Someone to share coffee with in the morning, someone to build a life with, someone who saw her and stayed. That's when she met Daniel. 35, a construction project manager from Portland. Confident, charming, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and own it without saying a word. He had a strong jawline, a quick smile, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when he looked at you. They met on a dating app. His profile said he loved hiking, old movies, and dogs. Claire swiped right. Their first date was at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. Daniel showed up early with flowers, white tulips, her favorite. He remembered she'd mentioned them in a message 3 days earlier. He asked about her job, her family, her dreams. He didn't talk much about himself, but when he did, it was always measured, controlled. He told her he'd grown up in a rough neighborhood, worked his way through community college, and built a career from nothing. He said he valued loyalty above everything. Claire found that admirable. She thought he was stable, grounded, safe. Their romance moved fast. Within 2 months, they were spending every weekend together. Daniel would drive an hour just to surprise her after a long shift. He'd bring takeout, rub her feet, tell her she worked too hard. He made her feel seen, cared for, loved. But there were moments, small moments, that Claire brushed off, like the time he got quiet when a male colleague texted her about a schedule change, or when he asked why she needed to go out with friends when she had him, or when he started suggesting she didn't need to post so much on social media because it attracted the wrong kind of attention. Claire told herself he was just protective, that he cared, that after everything she'd been through, a little jealousy was normal. It wasn't. But she didn't see it yet. None of us do until it's too late. 6 months into their relationship, Daniel proposed. It was during a weekend trip to Cannon Beach. They were walking along the shore at sunset when he dropped to one knee. The ring was simple, elegant, exactly what she would have chosen. Claire said yes, through tears. She called her mom that night and said, "I think I finally found him." Her mother, Susan, was cautious. She'd met Daniel a handful of times and found him polite but distant. Something about the way he held Claire's hand felt less like affection and more like possession. But Susan didn't want to ruin her daughter's happiness. So she smiled and said she was happy for her. She wished she'd said more. The wedding was small, intimate. 50 guests at a vineyard in Willamette Valley. Claire wore a lace dress she found at a vintage shop. Daniel wore a navy suit and cried during his vows. He promised to protect her, to honor her, to never let anything hurt her. Everyone believed him. Even Claire's younger brother, Marcus, who was usually suspicious of everyone, said Daniel seemed like a stand-up guy. The reception was full of laughter, dancing, and toasts about forever. Claire's best friend, Jenna, gave a speech about how Claire deserved this happiness more than anyone. She said, "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Now it's your turn to be taken care of." The room erupted in applause. Claire hugged Jenna and whispered, "I finally feel like I'm home." 2 days later, she'd be fighting for her life. The honeymoon was Daniel's idea. He'd always wanted to go to Hawaii, specifically Kauai. He said it was the island that felt the most untouched, the most romantic. He booked them a private villa at a luxury resort on the North Shore. The kind of place where the ocean is so blue it doesn't look real, where the air smells like plumeria and salt, where every sunset feels like a painting. Claire was thrilled. She posted a picture of their boarding passes with the caption, "Here's to forever," and a heart emoji. That post would later be used as evidence. They landed in Lihue on a Thursday afternoon. The resort sent a car to pick them up. The driver said they were a beautiful couple. Daniel tipped him generously. Check-in was smooth. The staff greeted them with lace and champagne. Their villa, number 12, overlooked the cliffs. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, a king-sized bed, and a private hot tub on the deck. Claire took a dozen photos. She texted her mom, "This place is unreal. I feel like I'm dreaming." That was the last message Susan would receive from her daughter for 3 days. The first day in paradise felt like a dream. Claire and Daniel woke up late, ordered room service, and spent the morning on the beach. They swam in the warm water, collected shells, and lay in the sand talking about the future. Claire said she wanted kids someday, maybe 2. Daniel said he wanted a house with a big yard and a dog. They talked about where they'd raise a family, what kind of life they wanted to build. Everything felt possible. That evening, they had dinner at the resort's oceanfront restaurant. Candles flickered on the table. The sky turned shades of pink and orange. Daniel ordered a bottle of wine and toasted to their new life together. Claire felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the wine. She felt safe, loved, chosen. She had no idea that by this time tomorrow, everything would change. Day 2 started differently. Claire woke up early and checked her phone. She had a few texts from Jenna and her mom asking how things were going. She started typing a reply when Daniel woke up. He asked who she was texting. Claire said just family and friends. He asked why she needed to do that on their honeymoon. Claire laughed it off, said it would only take a second. But Daniel didn't laugh. His jaw tightened. He got out of bed and went to the bathroom without saying another word. Claire felt a knot form in her stomach. She put her phone down and decided to let it go. They went to breakfast at the resort's cafe. The mood was tense, but Claire tried to lighten it. She talked about wanting to hike the Nepali coast, maybe rent kayaks. Daniel nodded but didn't respond much. Then a waiter, a young guy in his 20s, came over to refill their coffee. He smiled at Claire and said, "You two just get married? Congratulations. You're a lucky guy." He was talking to Daniel but looking at Claire. It was innocent, friendly. But Daniel's face changed. His eyes darkened. His hand tightened around his fork. Daniel leaned in and said quietly, "You enjoy that?" Claire blinked. "Enjoy what?" Daniel said. "The attention." You smiled at him. Claire's heart sank. She said, "He was just being nice." Daniel didn't respond. He stood up, threw cash on the table, and walked out. Claire sat there for a moment, stunned, embarrassed. She followed him back to the villa. The rest of the day was silent. Daniel went for a walk. Claire stayed in the villa and cried. She texted Jenna. "I think we had our first fight." Jenna replied, "Already? What happened?" Claire didn't respond. She didn't know how to explain it without making it sound worse than it was, or maybe she didn't want to admit that it was exactly as bad as it felt. That evening, Daniel came back. He apologized. He said he was stressed, that he wanted everything to be perfect, that he overreacted. He held her and said he loved her. Claire wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him, so she did. They ordered dinner in the villa. They drank wine. They tried to salvage the day. But the tension never fully left the room. It sat between them like a third person. That night, around 10, Claire went to take a shower. When she came out, Daniel was on her phone. She froze. He looked up at her and said, "Who's Ryan?" Ryan was a coworker, a fellow nurse. He'd texted Claire earlier that day saying, "Hope you're having an amazing time. You deserve it." It was harmless, but Daniel didn't see it that way. Claire tried to explain. Daniel cut her off. He said, "Why is another man texting you on our honeymoon?" Claire said, "He's just a friend, a coworker." Daniel's voice got louder. "You don't need male friends." Claire felt her pulse quicken. She said, "You're being ridiculous." That's when Daniel threw the phone. It hit the wall and shattered. Claire gasped. Daniel stepped toward her. She stepped back. He said, "Don't walk away from me," Claire said. "I'm not doing this." She tried to go into the bathroom. Daniel grabbed her arm. She pulled away. He grabbed harder. She said, "You're hurting me." He didn't let go. And that's when everything escalated. Neighbors in the adjacent villa heard shouting. A woman's voice saying "stop" over and over. A man's voice, angry, guttural. Then a loud thud. Then silence. At 11:47 p.m., resort security cameras captured Daniel leaving Villa 12. He was barefoot. His shirt was torn. His face was blank. He walked toward the cliffs and disappeared into the darkness. At 12:10 a.m., a housekeeper doing a late-night turn-down service knocked on Villa 12. No answer. She used her key. The lights were on. The room was in disarray. Furniture overturned, blood on the floor, and Claire, lying motionless near the bed, her face swollen, her breathing shallow. The housekeeper screamed. Security was called. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Claire was unresponsive. Her pulse was weak. She had bruises on her neck, arms, and torso. Her cheekbone was fractured. She was immediately airlifted to a hospital in Lihue. The doctor said if they'd found her 10 minutes later, she wouldn't have survived. If you're still following this moment, type "I'm still here" in the comments. Let's see who's watching till the truth unfolds. By the time the sun rose over Kauai, the search for Daniel had begun. Police combed the cliffs, the beaches, the hiking trails. Resort staff were questioned. Guests were interviewed. No one had seen him. It was as if he'd vanished into the Pacific. But at 6:30 that morning, a local fisherman spotted someone on the rocks near Hideaway's beach. It was Daniel. He was sitting with his knees pulled to his chest, staring at the water. The fisherman called it in. Police arrived and found Daniel disoriented, covered in cuts and bruises. He claimed he'd fallen, that he and Claire had argued, that she'd slipped and hit her head, that he panicked and ran. He said he didn't mean to hurt her, that he loved her, that it was an accident, but the evidence told a different story. Claire remained in a coma for 4 days. Her mother, Susan, flew to Hawaii immediately. She sat by her daughter's bedside, held her hand, and prayed. Marcus, Claire's brother, wanted to find Daniel and make him pay, but Susan told him to wait, to let the law handle it. The media caught wind of the story fast. Headlines screamed, "Honeymoon Horror in Hawaii" and "Bride Beaten on Dream Vacation." Photos of Claire and Daniel's wedding circulated online. People who didn't know them weighed in. Some blamed her for not seeing the signs. Others called him a monster. The truth, as always, was more complicated. Daniel was arrested and charged with attempted murder. His bail was set at $2 million. He couldn't pay it. He sat in a Kauai jail cell and waited. Claire woke up on the 5th day. She didn't remember the attack. She didn't remember most of that night. But when her mother told her what happened, Claire broke down. She said, "I thought he loved me." Susan held her and said, "He doesn't know what love is." Forensic analysts examined Villa 12. Blood spatter patterns indicated Claire had been struck multiple times. Bruising on her neck suggested strangulation. The pattern of injuries was inconsistent with a fall. It was assault, deliberate, violent. Police also reviewed security footage from the resort. Most of it was standard: couples walking, staff moving between buildings. But 20 minutes of footage from the hallway outside Villa 12 was missing, deleted. Investigators believed Daniel had tampered with it. But then, during a second review, a detective noticed something. In the reflection of a glass door near the villa, you could see movement. A figure raising an arm. Another figure falling. It was grainy, but it was enough. When confronted with the enhanced footage, Daniel's story changed. He admitted they'd fought. He admitted he'd grabbed her. But he insisted he didn't mean to hurt her. That she'd provoked him. That she wouldn't stop talking. The trial took place 8 months later. Claire, still recovering, sat in the courtroom every day. She had a scar on her cheek that wouldn't fade. She wore it like a badge of survival. The prosecution painted a clear picture. A man who couldn't handle his wife's independence. A man whose jealousy turned into rage. A man who nearly killed the woman he promised to protect. The defense tried to argue it was a moment of passion, not premeditation. They brought in character witnesses who said Daniel was a good guy, a hard worker, someone who'd just snapped under pressure. But the jury didn't buy it. They saw the photos of Claire's injuries. They heard the 911 call from the housekeeper. They watched the footage. And when Claire took the stand and read the text messages Daniel had sent her in the days before the attack, messages that said, "You belong to me, and I'll never let you go," the courtroom went silent. Even the defense attorney looked uncomfortable. The most emotional moment came when Susan read her victim impact statement. She stood at the podium, hands shaking, and said, "You didn't just hurt my daughter. You stole her sense of safety. You made her afraid to love again. You took a woman who spent her life healing others and broke her in ways that may never fully heal. And for what? Because she smiled at a waiter? Because she texted a friend? You are not a man. You are a coward." The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. They found Daniel guilty of second-degree attempted murder, aggravated assault, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to 23 years in prison. When the verdict was read, Daniel didn't react. He just stared straight ahead. Claire, sitting in the gallery, finally exhaled. It wasn't relief. It was simply the end of one chapter, the beginning of another. But the story didn't end there. 6 months after the sentencing, a letter arrived at the prosecutor's office. It was from Daniel. In it, he claimed that Claire had survived briefly after the attack and that he'd tried to save her. He said he'd called for help, that he'd held her, that he'd begged her to stay with him. None of this was true. Medical records showed Claire was unconscious from the moment paramedics arrived. But the letter revealed something more disturbing. Daniel still believed he was the victim, that Claire had pushed him to this, that if she'd just listened, none of it would have happened. Psychologists who reviewed the letter said it was textbook narcissistic behavior, a refusal to accept responsibility, a rewriting of reality to fit his narrative. It was a confession wrapped in denial, and it was chilling. Experts in domestic violence say cases like Claire's are more common than we think. That intimate partner violence doesn't always start with a punch. It starts with control, with isolation, with small comments that chip away at your sense of self, with jealousy disguised as love. And by the time the violence begins, The victim is often too deep in to see a way out. Claire's case sparked a nationwide conversation. Advocacy groups used her story to educate others on the warning signs. Schools brought in speakers, workplaces implemented training, and Claire herself, once she was strong enough, began speaking publicly. She said, "I'm not ashamed. I didn't do anything wrong. I loved someone who didn't know how to love me back. But I survived. And if my story helps even one person leave before it's too late, then it was worth telling. So let me ask you, could anyone have stopped this before it began? Were there signs that Claire's friends and family missed? Or was Daniel so skilled at hiding who he really was that no one could have known? How do you protect someone from a person they believe is their protector? These are questions without easy answers, but they're questions we have to keep asking, because somewhere right now, someone is in a relationship that feels a little too controlling, a little too isolating, a little too much like love but not quite, and they're telling themselves, it's fine, that it'll get better, that they're overreacting. But sometimes, overreacting is what saves your life. Behind closed doors, paradise can hide pain. A smile in a wedding photo can mask fear, and forever can end far too soon. Claire's story is a reminder that we all dream of love, but love should never hurt. It should never control. It should never make you feel small or afraid or like you need permission to exist. Real love lifts you up. It gives you space to breathe. It sees you and celebrates you. Anything less than that isn't love. It's possession. And possession, no matter how it's dressed up, is violence waiting to happen. We all dream of forever. But sometimes, forever ends far too soon. Claire didn't get the honeymoon she deserved. She didn't get the life she'd planned. But she got something else. She got her voice back. She got her strength back. And she got a second chance. Not everyone does. So if you're watching this and something feels familiar, if you see yourself in Claire's story, please hear this. You deserve better. You deserve safety. You deserve real love. And it's never too late to walk away. So here's my question for you. Was justice really served? 23 years for nearly ending a life, for shattering a family, for taking someone's sense of safety. Is that enough? Or should the penalty for intimate partner violence be steeper? Let me know in the comments. And if you or someone you know is in a relationship that doesn't feel right, reach out. Talk to someone. There are resources. There are people who will believe you. You are not alone. And if you thought this case was shocking, wait until you hear about the Florida bride who vanished before the honeymoon even began. That story is coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Share this video to keep awareness alive. Because the more we talk about these stories, the harder it becomes for them to stay hidden. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being here until the very end.